Bet horse racing on DRF Bets. We'll match your first deposit of $200. Get free expert picks and past performances, plus weekly cash back. All from Daily Racing Form, the most trusted name in horse racing. Dan Illman and Mike Beer are taking a look at Saturday's co-feature at Aqueduct. It's race number 9, the $150,000 Queens County for older horses going 1 1/8 miles. Let's take a look at this field. This race, of course, was rescheduled. We were expecting to see the Queens County last week, but heavy fog derailed the card halfway through. The Queens County was redrawn. Law Professor is the 2-1 morning line favorite, dropping out of the Breeders' Cup.
Yeah, I mean, I think mostly he has the figures obviously to be tough in here anyway, Dan. But I think mostly he's favored because he's dropping out of a couple of grade ones, including that race 2 starts back against Life is Good, where he actually ran pretty well.
He's adaptable seemingly to any sort of pace scenario, and that could work to his favor as we take a look at the Timeform US pace projector. And I can see this race heating up, maybe to a red bar fast-paced scenario. Thomas Shelby is a quick horse. Eloquist just went gate to wire against 3-year-olds in the Discovery. Seafoam is a horse that can get close to the pace. I think Thomas Shelby is going to make the lead, but I won't be surprised if they ratchet up the pressure on the backstretch.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dan. I felt like this was a race that could be pretty competitive up front, and that the more I looked at the race, the more it sent me looking for closers.
Why not take a shot with the number 1 Forewarned in the Queens County? He won this race last year at 42-1 coming from off the pace. That's his running style. There's a chance there's a fast pace once again. And this horse on occasion pops up with a big effort. Distance is his friend. He likes 1 1/8 miles, 1 1/4 miles, and he's run pretty well without Lasix in the past.
All those things are true. He's also supposed to catch a fair setup in this race. You mentioned that he won this race the last time they ran it at a huge price, and he'll be a pretty big price again in here, I think. A few starts after that, Dan, right back here at Aqueduct going this distance. He won the Excelsior. So I don't know. To me, he's just a horse who makes plenty of sense in here. He's very consistent. I mean, even though he doesn't, win very often anymore, it's not like there are a bunch of bad races on his card. He shows up, and when things go his way, he's competitive.
And you will get a square price. He's 20-1 on the morning line. The 2 is Unbridled Bomber, and I like that Jimmy Ryerson backed off a little bit after they tried the Dwyer. He's eventually run through his conditions now, and now he seems ready to take on stakes competition once again off of this race at 1 3/16 miles at Aqueduct in a second life allowance. He made a sweeping move on the turn to take command, and it's over from here.
Yeah, just trounces this field. Set a nice trip in here, Dan. The pace was slow. He kept it within range, staying out in the clear, and you saw him make his move there in the upper stretch. Just rolls right over this field, powers home. Really impressive win here, and the best thing about it is it backed up his win 1 start prior, where he also ran really well in that race. That was a much more competitive pace. He sat well back off it and made a huge run to win. And, earning the 94 buyer, it sort of made you wonder, is he really that good? Let's see what he does in his next start. And he came back in his next start. He did that, what we just watched. This horse is very good right now.
The number 3, Seafoam, has been very good for a long time. He's a hard-hitting New York bred. He's won 10 times, and perhaps most importantly for this race, he's getting back to arguably his best distance. His last 4 wins have come at 1 1/8 miles. Let's watch his last start when they cut him back to a sharp 1-turn mile in the Alex M. Robb, and he's up close to the pace as he usually is, game to get up for second in this spot over a muddy track. I think stretching out's going to help him, and he can work out a trip. He seems to have that tactical ability.
Yeah, stretching out, I do think, is key for him. 9 furlongs around 2 turns just seems to be his preferred distance. So we'll see if it makes a little bit of a difference here for him, Dan. To me, the key for Seafoam is I personally feel like he's at his absolute best when he can make the lead. And so that's going to be key for him here to see if he can finally make his way to the front, because in his last 3 starts, and I don't think he's run poorly in any one of those races, he was beaten to the lead every single time. And I think that really works against him. He's got the inside post here. And I just feel like Jose Vargas, he's got to come out of there running. He's got to send this horse, and he's got to try to make the lead with him.
The 4 is Sugar Ray 2, and he's very versatile in terms of distance. He's won at a mile. He's won at a mile and an eighth. He's stakes placed at a mile and three quarters. He won an off-turf stake 2 starts back at Parks going the mile and an eighth. He got a figure for that performance. Then they cut him back to a mile, and he just didn't run very well. I like that they gave him plenty of time since that effort.
I like that too. He's another one that feels like stretching back out a little bit in distance could probably help him. And even though he ran the 96 two back, it's not like that, figure came out of nowhere. He'd run several faster races in the past. So he's another one who I just kind of feel like when things go his way, he's pretty competitive, even in races like this. The win 2 starts back in an off turf race. I mean, he got a perfect trip that day, but maybe he'll get another good trip here, Dan. He's got good tactical speed.
Naval Aviator is the number 5. Jeremy Laprida up from Parks to ride. This horse was third in the Discovery last time out behind Eloquist. The Discovery, of course, is a race restricted to 3-year-olds. So not only will he face Eloquist again, but he will face some older horses. I wonder if maybe just the race shape and track didn't help him out that day. Eloquist was up close on the lead. I thought that track might have favored speed a little bit.
Yeah, and he didn't break great in that race either. Got away from the gate last in there, so maybe that compromised him a little bit too. I didn't think he ran great in there, but maybe there's an excuse to be had. His win 2 starts back was, sort of, workman-like. I thought he ran fine in there, but I wasn't blown away by it. I felt like he probably had to improve a little bit to be competitive here, but his last 2 races on wet tracks, Dan, maybe he gets fast dirt for this race.
Jockey Andrew Wolfson won a stake at Parks earlier this week. He'll pilot the 6. Plot the Dots, one of 2 entrants for trainer Lynn Cash, who claimed this horse for $40,000 4 starts back. He is a big, giant sea monster of a gelding who really appreciates a mile and an eighth and these longer distance races. I talked to Cash before he ran this horse in the Manfuso last week, and he said, while the horse earned a 95 buyer and looked good 2 starts back, he bled a little bit through Lasix. He said maybe this is a horse that needs a little bit of time between races. Well, lo and behold, he's back in on 8 days rest. Maybe that's a good sign.
Maybe it is. We'll see what happens with this. Another one who the more I looked at it, the more I just felt like maybe another one who gets a good trip in here and it sort of makes a difference. Overall, I thought this race was probably going to be pretty tough for him to win, even though he got the 95 2 starts back. That was a much weaker field. He got a great trip in that race.
He seemed to be traveling very comfortably in the stages of the Manfuso last time out, and then they ran away from him, turning into the stretch. Maybe a mile and a 16th just doesn't play to his grinding style. Like you, I do think he can get a bit of a trip. Law Professor is your morning line favorite, and you said it all when he ran on the Woodward 2 starts back against Life is Good. He gave that horse a challenge on the turn. Life is Good is just simply much better than Law Professor, but he ran well. You could also make the argument somebody had to run second in that sloppy Woodward. They ran him in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile. He ran his race, and that's his usual race, isn't it? A buyer in the mid-90s. He should get a good trip here.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what is it? 4 of his last 5 dirt starts, buyers of either 93 or 95. I think he's going to be fine over this distance. He ran pretty well in the Woodward 2 starts back. I don't have anything to add to your analysis. He's no match for Life is Good, but that was a pretty good effort in a short field going this distance and on this track. I don't know. I guess he's the horse to beat. I just didn't really want to bet it.
Since middle of July, trainer Butch Reed's won something like 11 or 12 stakes races at 4 or 5 different tracks, including Eloquist's upset in this race, the Discovery for 3-year-olds, going a mile and an eighth. And he was able to get to the lead on this wet track. Now, he's confronted on the outside by Barres, who I'm not sure really is at his best at this distance, but Eloquist is going to fight on back and win. He showed a lot of heart in this performance, Mike.
Yeah, it just keeps getting better. This was a pretty significant step up in class, I thought, Dan. He went off at a good price. He took pressure from the favorite all the way around the track, and he's, pretty game to fight this horse off. I mean, there's no real closing going on in here, but I didn't want to take too much away from Eloquist. That was a career best performance. He's going to have to back it up now. In what feels like a tougher pace scenario and against some better horses, but I'm not going to knock this horse. His current form's good.
Like his graded stakes winning stablemate Riding with Biden, he seems to have improved since being gelded, 4 for 6 since the process. Lying under the weeds in this race, isn't he, Mike, is the number 9 Bourbonic. A lot of folks forgot that he won the Wood Memorial at a mile and an eighth in a race where the pace heated up. He was only 72-1 that day, and he beat you in a little bit of a photo finish that you're still very angry about, I realize. But don't you get the feeling that last time out, Todd used that 7/8 of a mile race as a prep? Now he's going to get the distance he wants and maybe the setup.
It's exactly how I looked at him. That 7 furlong race off of a really long layoff last time. It looked like nothing but a prep day. He broke last. He got completely outrun early, but he was making up pretty significant ground at the end of that race. I thought he finished up well. He galloped out right past the field. I think they were prepping him for this race. The added distance is supposed to help him. The question, I guess, is how good is this horse really? He hasn't won since taking advantage a little bit in the wood nearly 2 years ago. I realize it's not that many starts and it's mostly graded stakes, but he hasn't really been effective in any of those races. I don't know how good he is. I'm going to wait and see what kind of price he goes off at in here, Dan, because I would never take any kind of short price on him.
He is 8-1 on the morning line. Thomas Shelby is the number 10. And Mike, we talked about how Seafoam is a need the lead type. I have a feeling Thomas Shelby's a need the lead type as well. He went pretty quick in the Dickie Small last time out, going 1.125 at Laurel, and he was beaten by stone closer Armando R, who's really improved in his last few starts. I just don't see a path where he's going to get an easy lead. Maybe he'll be in front after the first quarter, but they'll be coming after him.
I agree with that, Dan. And I also I kind of don't like his form since this horse switched out of the Diodora barn and into the Jacobson barn. And listen, maybe the last 2 races just didn't set up well for him as far as the pace goes. But even when he won first time for Jacobson at Monmouth, I mean, he just had such a soft trip on the lead that day. He was in good form for Diodoro end of 2021, early 2022, but I don't like his form since then.
Lynn Cash's second entrant in the race completes the field. It's the 11 Double Crown, who pulled off a 42-1 upset in the Kelso handicap at the Big A, going a mile, 3 starts back. I talked to Lynn after his last race, and he said the Cigar Mile probably overmatched, hated the sloppy track, didn't like the synthetic last time out, and didn't like that wide trip as well. Even though he's a graded stakes winner over this track, Mike, from this outside post, I want to see him get 1.125 miles.
Me too. I like him as a horse, but as opposed to some of the other horses we already talked about, who I think benefit from the 2-turn 9 furlong race, I don't think that helps this horse at all. I think he's way better at a 1-turn mile.
This is a wide open race. I have a lot of respect for Law Professor, but I want to try to find a price in here. I don't think he has such a tremendous edge. Let's take a look at our top picks in here. I want to use your horse, Unbridled Bomber, in any sort of multi-race exotic, because I just think he might be the now horse in the race that's finding his form.
That's why I took him, Dan. I felt like this race was more wide open than to just, settle for a 7-2 shot on the morning line, which is the price on Unbridled Bomber. But I went through it top to bottom a couple of times, and I just couldn't find the horse that I wanted to take other than him. His last 2 races are really good, and I don't think they just came out of nowhere. This horse started out with some potential. It took him a while, but it feels like he's finally there.
I'll use Unbridled Bomber. I may bet plot the dots at a price that should be around the double-digit marker. So I like him at 1.125 miles. He's run fast races in his last 2. And I don't mind him cutting back so quickly from his most recent start. They're wheeling him back. He'll be the right price. I'm not sure if he's a true stakes horse or not. 6-2 for me, 2-1-9-7 for Mike. It's the Queen's County, one of 2 stakes races at the Big A on Saturday. Good luck.